Texas got the week off after a tough loss in Dallas, but it's time to face the Cougars down in Houston. How does the Houston offense operate? Why is their defense underperforming? And most importantly, can Texas get back into the fight and secure the win after a painful defeat? After the show, Inside Texas is the spot to stay in tune with the Texas Longhorns. Constant recruiting updates, game analysis, and team info dropping all the time. Subscribe to InsideTexas.com today. Link in the description. The Longhorns had 2 weeks to heal up and get back to the work at hand. What can Houston do to derail Texas's ultimate goal? Without further ado, let's get into it. Houston lost a prolific quarterback in Clayton Tune. He was the first graded passer if added to the Big 12, throwing for an insane 4,065 yards and 40 touchdowns last season. But he got drafted and Holgorsen had to find a way to not fall off a cliff. Luckily, Texas Tech's quarterback room had too much competition and it forced Donovan Smith to head to H-Town. Smith is a big 6'5", 240-pound athletic quarterback. He started 4 games last season, including the win over Texas when Shuck went down before ultimately being benched again. For all the natural gifts, he struggled with consistency and making the right play at the right time, which made sense for a player without much starting experience. But now it's year 4. Has he improved? Yeah, he has, both on tape and statistically. He's second in the Big 12, throwing 13 touchdowns, and he's 4th in completion percentage. Last year, he'd panic and roll out and try to force something. This year, the reads are still simple in this air raid variant, like the quick slant or a mesh concept. But when it's not there, I see him roll out, eyes downfield, and moving to the side where the backside concept is still developing, showing he understands where guys should be. And that's a step. He's asked to throw a ton, leading the league in attempts with 221. But it's quicker concepts to keep the chains moving, displayed by the league's lowest average depth of target at just 8 yards per pass. Dink and dunk down the field with the screen and short game, and then occasionally mix in the deep shot over the top to keep the defense honest. When it's time to throw deep on 12% of his throws, Donovan Smith completes at a league average 39% with 3 touchdowns to 0 interceptions. Smith is getting his cue pre-snap, anticipating the one-on-one, and due to that height, he can easily eye the receiver and throw some nice-looking deep balls at times. Of course, if any of the concepts aren't open or the picture changes dramatically post-snap, Smith can roll out in an attempt to extend plays or continue on to pick up the first down with his legs. That large size paired with that athleticism can be frustrating, as Texas fans remember from last season. He's 3rd in the league with 18 scrambles, so that is a core part of his game. Between the production in the air and on the ground, Donovan Smith is the 6th graded QB overall of 16 Big 12 quarterbacks. Houston lost another major piece of their offense last year in receiver Tank Dell. He posted a wild 1,400 yards receiving with 17 touchdowns, and he got drafted by the Texans. Houston doesn't have that level of production this season, but they do have a sturdy crew of wideouts to help out their spread-focused offense. You're going to see a lot of 3 and 4 receiver sets, and they distribute the ball around efficiently. There's still some timing issues due to this rhythmic style of play, but they have improved throughout the year. First in targets with 52 is the outside Z receiver Samuel Brown at 6'2", 195 pounds. The sophomore has trouble connecting with the quarterback, only pulling in 36 catches on those 52 attempts, for a middle-of-the-pack 69% catch rate. He's force-fed the ball schematically, leading the league in targets and therefore yards. But he doesn't necessarily stand out in the non-volume categories. 18th in yards per reception, 14th in yards after catch per reception, 12th in yards per route run out of 63 receivers. So it's not so much that he's elite in any aspect. He's just solid overall, and he gets so many opportunities that he will inevitably impact the game. Overall, he's the 7th graded receiver in the conference. A continuance of that trend and 2nd in attempts with 48 is Matthew Golden. He's the 4th most targeted receiver in the league, and he can also struggle getting the timing right, only catching 58% of his targets. Golden's an outside receiver, but he has the flexibility to be used in the slot about 35% of the time. Golden is similar in usage as Brown. Both are able to be targeted on screens, short, and deep a similar amount. The difference is Golden is a dynamic athlete displayed by his multiple kick returns, but he also has good body control, able to make plays on the ball. He leads Houston with 4 touchdown receptions, tied for 1st in the league, so he's been effective when it matters. He just doesn't dominate in any of the metrics that account for volume. So overall, he's the 31st ranked Big 12 wide receiver. And then in the slot, you have a tall athlete in the 6'3", 202-pound Joseph Manjack. It's a unique build for a traditional slot, but think of it more as a tight end style position in this scheme. Manjack's caught 29 of 39 passes for a 74% catch rate with 3 touchdowns. He's a tough matchup for nickels and safeties at that size. He's not going to dust you with his speed, but he can absolutely get to his spot and go up for it. He's most likely to be found lurking over the middle in the intermediate game. I like Manjack's play style, and I think he's a really intriguing third option to have on your team. Overall, he's graded 19th of 63 Big 12 receivers. And last in attempts with 16, you have Stephon Johnson Jr., who had an awesome game last week versus West Virginia, going 4 for 4 for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns, catching the Hail Mary to win the game. The Oklahoma State transfer hasn't done much this season for Houston, but after last week, I'd be shocked if he wasn't given more opportunities. He's currently graded 48th of 50 Big 12 receivers. Houston is mainly using their tight ends as blockers in line or as lead blockers on screens when they are split out. Mike O'Loughlin has 5 receptions on 7 targets for 34 yards, and Matt Burns has 3 catches for 25 yards. This offense throws the 22nd most pass attempts per game in the nation, and you've got to have an offensive line that can hold up, and Houston's group has performed well halfway through the season. Houston has 3 offensive linemen in the top half of pass blockers. The first overall pass blocker in the Big 12 is the 6'7", 315-pound left tackle Patrick Paul. He's a physical rarity due to that length, and he's also an early round NFL pick. He hasn't given up a single pressure all season, much less a sack. Then former Texas transfer left guard Tyler Johnson is the 13th graded pass blocker, giving up 1 sack on 7 total pressures with good size at 6'5", 320 pounds. Rounding out the top half is right guard Tank Jenkins, ranking 36, giving up 1 sack and 10 total pressures. Overall, Houston is tied for 8th of 14 teams in offensive line pass blocking efficiency, only allowing disruption on 11% of their passing downs. This is a pretty good group through the air as the 53rd passing offense out of 133 teams in terms of success rate, and allows them to field a competitive offense. But the running game isn't where their strengths lie. First in rushing attempts is freshman Parker Jenkins. The 5'11", 196-pound back has a unique running style, machine-like. The deliberate motion showing the precision track athletes have to learn to streamline their movement. He plays upright, but he's able to make cuts, and if unimpeded, he has long speed verified by a 10.8 100 meter in high school. He's 15th in yards per attempt, averaging 5.2 a touch, and 12th in yards after contact per attempt, which is all good for a young back. I'm interested to see what he looks like a couple years from now. Overall, he's the 24th graded running back out of 29. Second in attempts with 54 is the 5'11", 185-pound redshirt sophomore Stacy Snead. He's a smaller frame back with great short area quickness, fast enough to get outside or make use of an open gap on the interior with that twitch. He had an impressive 6.5 yards per attempt last year, which would have led the league with a top 5 breakaway percentage, able to bust a long run. This season, there's been a bit of a dip, only averaging 5.6 yards per carry, good for 11th. But he's still just as lethal in gashing you on the long run with an awesome 53% breakaway percentage. He's specialized due to his frame and skill set, but he's a tough back to counter. But overall, this season, he's graded as 20th of 29 Big 12 backs. Houston also brought in West Virginia transfer Tony Mathis Jr., and he's dealt with some injury, but he's hoping to get back in the mix with 38 attempts on the year. At 5'11", 208 pounds, he's the largest of the backs in rotation, but he's still trying to find his way into the lineup consistently. Houston has some unique runners that of course would look improved if given a better context. Philosophically, the scheme is just more geared to the pass and the run blocking needs improvement. You've got the future NFL pick and left tackle Patrick Paul doing his part, ranking 7th of 81 Big 12 run blockers. But only right guard Tank Jenkins is left in the top half at that 32 spot of 81 total guys. Houston is the 72nd ranked O-line in offensive line yards per rush, and 114th in the country on rushing power success rate on those gotta have it downs like 3rd and 1. Put it all together and you've got a slightly above average overall offense, most dangerous in the short passing game. They can have moments of success, but lack the overall cohesiveness to challenge teams game in and game out. The keys for the Texas defense are similar to some other games this year. The defensive line will generally be nullified with quick passing. When you do get Houston behind the sticks, be wary of Smith finding a way to use his legs. But if you're decisive in your rush, he can be brought down. For the linebackers and secondary, be prepared to deal with athletes in space and getting nickel and dime to death. Texas has had issues with this style like Tech and Oklahoma State last year and even some OU this year. Be wary of leaving those seams open when you have let your guard down, because Smith and company can hit the big play if you hand it to them. For the run defense, statistically you're dealing with a below average unit, so there's an advantage on paper with Texas only allowing 3.4 yards per rush, good for 33rd in the country. On the limited times they do run, shut it down, but they pass so often there's times you're going to get caught sleeping. The Houston offense is neither a pushover or a dominant force, but they do have talent with an offensive-minded head coach that can make things happen if you overlook their personnel or their play style. But it's not the Houston offense that led to their 3-3 record. They need to improve on the other side of the ball. But before we hit the defense, the sponsor of today's video is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is a skill-based daily fantasy sports app where you can make college football player projections all season long. How does it work? You select 2 to 6 players and choose more or less on their prize pick projections. It could be passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, and more. And if those players score more or less than their prize pick projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. Just hop on the Prize Picks app or website, go to the college football tab, and check out the player projections. It's a smooth process where you can make your entries in 60 seconds or less with fast withdrawals. It's that easy. As a first-time depositor, use promo code TexasHomer, and you will receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. That's double your money up to $100 for your first time. So sign up for Prize Picks, use promo code TexasHomer at sign up, and add even more excitement to your game day. Link in the description. The Houston defense has continued its slide from its impressive 2021 season, ranking 26th in DFEI in the nation. But they stumbled last season, ranking 86th. And this season, facing a jump in competition, joining the Power 5, they ranked 91st out of 133 FBS teams. The run defense is one prong of the issues. They're giving up 4.4 yards per rush for 81st in the country. Houston is granting opposing offenses a 44% rushing success rate, allowing teams to consistently run on them. What's interesting is that individual players are generally doing well, but there's a wider disconnect. Going based off last week's starters at West Virginia, there's some effective resistance in the defensive interior with the undersized but mighty nose Chidozie Nwankpa grading out impressively as the third-rated run-stopping interior defensive lineman. Defensive tackle Jamari Caldwell also does his part, graded as the 8th best run-stopping big boy out of 50 interior D linemen. Rotational nose Hakeem Ojijolea also cracks the first half at 19th, but the 3 other rotational guys all struggle to be above average, fending off the rushing attack. On the edge, starting defensive end Nelson Caesar is the 6th graded run stopper on the exterior, and he's a mid-rounder in the NFL. Rotational end Zykeia Strong ranks 22nd, and weak side end David Ogwebu ranks 24th of 51 edge run stoppers. A solid defensive line, but its reinforcements in the linebacking core is where there's a big hole. On the second level, only will linebacker Malik Robinson is top half, and not by much, ranking 20th of 44 backers against the rush. All corners are bottom 4th of the league, not able to seal outside stuff, forcing the safeties to come down. Luckily, the safeties do a pretty good job, and they're active hitters. Free safety AJ Halsey ranks 9th. Nickel Malik Fleming ranks 22nd, and strong safety Jawan Gaston ranks 28th of 57 DBs against the run. Houston has prided themselves on their pass rushing ability. Even though they were a G5 school, they're still located in talent-rich Houston. They call the group Sack Avenue, but that's not held true this season so far, only averaging 1.5 sacks per game, good for 100th in the country. Rotational interior guys like Anthony Holmes Jr. rank 11th with 13 total pressures and 1 sack. Cedric Williams ranks 14th with just 4 total pressures. But the remainder of the group is bottom 7 out of 47 interior pass rushers. On the edge, they're lacking, with only Nelson Caesar ranking in the top half at 19th. But he is the biggest threat, posting an impressive 5 sacks this year. But 4 of those 5 sacks came against non-Power 5 teams, so they're not likely indicative of his success versus higher caliber tackles. No one else on the edge is winning enough to consistently change games. On top of that, Houston doesn't send linebackers, corners, nickels, or safeties enough to meet the minimum snap requirements. So basically, Houston entirely relies on the defensive line to make plays, and when that hasn't happened this year, you give quarterbacks all day to work, and that's reflected in their pass defense. Houston is 92nd in the nation in opponent yards per pass, 95th in opponent passing success rate, and 103rd in the nation in giving up the explosive ball. Starting Mike linebacker Jamal Morris does good work playing to the field, and he ranks 3rd amongst coverage linebackers. But then there's a large drop-off after him. Of the defensive backs, Isaiah Hamilton is their best corner, ranking 10th with an awesome 3 interceptions on the year. But the opposite starting corner, Jalen Emery, ranks 30th of 46 corners, and the rest of the rotation falls below that. One of their more heady players, Malik Fleming, is at the nickel spot, but I liked his intelligence best on display when he was playing that safety spot versus TCU. He's the most effective of the secondary types, ranking 14th while nabbing 3 interceptions. You can also see his athletic ability during his punt returns. Then you've got free safety AJ Halsey at 18th, and that's it for top half performers in the Big 12 in pass coverage out of 55 DBs. This defense almost anticipates a former Big 12 style of air raid fireworks with their linebacker and defensive back usage, when the league has become much more heavy personnel and run focused in the past few years. Lack of depth, size, a jump into Power 5 play, unfitting scheme. Whatever the reason, there's this lack of through line and connectedness between all 3 levels in the run and the pass. And due to that, teams are putting up an average of 31.3 points per game, ranking 91st in the country. The keys for the Texas offense is to play a varied, clean game. Blend your run and pass games because both should find success against this defense, though Houston did look better versus the run in their West Virginia game. With Jake Majors hurt, it'll be tricky to improve run blocking cohesion on the interior of the offensive line, but that's something that's got to improve, and Houston offers quality reps in that regard. In the past, let's see Quinn continue to improve his consistency in a non-marquee matchup and do all the little things right when the nation isn't watching. Also, there's going to be opportunities to take the top off this defense. Let's see the return of the deep ball as other teams have exposed repeatedly versus Houston. The Cougars had a hell of a game versus West Virginia last Thursday and showed that even when they struggled early into the season, that they don't intend to roll over, especially versus this Texas team in front of a sold-out crowd at home in Houston. Can Texas move on from the OU loss and continue to play at a high level? We will see this Saturday afternoon when the Longhorns take on the Cougars. Thanks for hanging out. Watch some more of my videos here. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you want to support quality Texas content. As always, hook 'em.